Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, Israel waging war as missiles fly in from Lebanon and Yemen. And Hamas sabotages hostage negotiations. Vandalism and violent rhetoric in Australia, reflecting mounting anti-Semitism. Plus, ensuring that no one forgets, Israel's Ministry of Heritage collecting evidence of October 7th atrocities. And one mother shares the story of her son's epic heroism. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Israel is ramping up its war against Iran's proxies in Lebanon to the north and Gaza to the south. This comes as a showdown over Tehran's nuclear program looms in the Middle East. The IDF is expanding operations in Gaza and taking out Hamas leaders. It's also striking at Hezbollah forces after new attacks on the Galilee. Here's the latest. The IDF struck dozens of Hezbollah rocket launcher sites on Saturday, the largest attack since the ceasefire. The attacks followed a rocket launch from southern Lebanon towards the Galilee, which Israel called a blatant violation of the ceasefire. Hezbollah denies responsibility, but the IDF says the terror group is operating in the area. In Gaza, Israeli forces are expanding their military push with another division preparing to enter the fighting. The operations have been ongoing since the end of the ceasefire last week, and Israel has pledged to continue any negotiations under fire. During the recent fighting, the IDF eliminated two major Hamas leaders. On Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited new recruits for the Armored Corps.
We're winning because we understand that in order to defeat our enemies, those who are closing in on us, we break through them with crushing ground force, in addition to the excellent work of the Air Force, intelligence, Navy, and of course the infantry.
On Fox News Sunday, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff blamed Hamas for the collapse of negotiations to free more hostages.
I was in Doha. I met with many of the Arab leaders at the Arab Summit. I thought we had a deal, an acceptable deal. I even thought we had an approval from Hamas. Maybe that's just me getting, duped. So this is on Hamas. The United States stands with the state of Israel. We need to be clear who the aggressor is here, and that is Hamas.
Beyond the fighting in Gaza and southern Lebanon, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz addressed the major threat facing the region and says the Trump administration has clear goals for Iran and its nuclear program.
Full dismantlement. Iran has to give up its program in a way that the entire world can see. And this is, look, as President Trump has said, this is coming to a head. All options are on the table. And it is time for Iran to walk away completely from its desire to have a nuclear weapon.
Meanwhile, the Israeli cabinet agreed unanimously on a no-confidence vote to dismiss the Attorney General, who it says is undermining the Prime Minister and his policies. The unprecedented vote follows the firing of Ronen Bar, the head of the Shin Bet, Israel's version of the FBI. Thousands of Israelis took to the streets to protest the firing, but many Israelis believe the Prime Minister has the authority and reasons to fire Bar and the Attorney General. Israel also continues to face threats from within. An attacker ran over several people at a bus stop in northern Israel this morning, then began shooting, killing one 70-year-old man. Sirens wailed throughout south and central Israel as another Houthi missile sent people into bomb shelters. Israel successfully intercepted the missile. To stop those missiles, the U.S. is continuing its daily campaign to eliminate the threat by the Houthis against Israel and global shipping in the Red Sea. The U.S. says a key Houthi leader has been eliminated. In Gaza, Israel's ground operation is widening. The IDF also eliminated a major Hamas leader. Israel also destroyed more than 100 white pickup trucks throughout Gaza. Hamas terrorists used those trucks in their massacre on October 7th. In the UK, a joint commission of British parliamentarians released a landmark report about October 7th. It concluded, The atrocities committed by Hamas and allied groups on 7 October marked a day of unprecedented violence. There are numerous accounts of deliberate killings, hostage abuse, sexual violence, and desecration of both the living and the dead. The goal behind the report is to combat denial of what happened on October 7th, just like some people deny the Holocaust. During a stalemate in hostage negotiations, Hamas released another propaganda video. It shows two Israelis pleading with another hostage who was freed to speak out about how hard the conditions are in captivity. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff says he blames Hamas for the collapse of the hostage talks. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar says there is a way the war can end immediately.
The war can end tomorrow, with releasing our hostages, the demilitarization of Gaza, and the withdrawal of the armed Hamas and Islamic Jihad forces from there. War is not an ideology. We would be happy, and we will be happy, to achieve our aims by diplomatic means. But if that is not possible, we have no choice but continuing our military efforts.
Israeli media is reporting Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer will lead a delegation to Washington in the coming days. He will urge the Trump administration to set a timetable on President Trump's maximum economic pressure campaign on Iran to end its nuclear weapons program. Israel expects once an agreed time period expires, alternative decisions would be made, presumably a military strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. Coming up, the latest in Israeli high-stakes politics, analysis from senior editor John Walge. Welcome back to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm joined here in our studio with CBN senior editor John Walge. John, there's a lot of turmoil going on in the streets, literally just a few blocks away from the Bureau. People are upset about two things. First, the firing of Renon Bar. He's the head of the Shin Bet, equivalent of the American FBI, and Israel's Attorney General. Help us understand what is actually happening.
Well, I think the step to fire the Attorney General and the head of the Shin Bet was basically a reaction that was long in coming. This was not a trigger move by Netanyahu. This is something he'd been planning for a long time, partially based on the failings of Ronan Bar to see and then to communicate the threat that posed by Hamas on October 7th. That was a huge thing.
Yeah, apparently he waited hours before he contacted Netanyahu.
Right. And then with the Attorney General, it's been the constant judicial attack on Netanyahu combined with just in every way possible almost trying to interfere with the government carrying out its duties, and the vote on the Attorney General was unanimous,
and Ronan Bar was unanimous.
Both were unanimous, and so now you have a setup where the courts and the government itself are going to fight for who controls for the final say on these decisions. And that's what's triggering the extra street protests, because they see a real danger on the left. The judiciary is their power base, really, and they see it possibly vanishing if the government, the elected government of Netanyahu, can take back some of the powers which they claim are reserved for the people of Israel who work through their elected officials.
It seems very reminiscent of what happened before October 7th with massive protests against the judicial reform, that battle power struggle between, is it going to be the Supreme Court who has the final say or the government?
Yeah, the judicial, I would say, Chris, and you may have a different view, but I would say that the demonstrations were larger against judicial reform than they've been in favor of the hostages and against the Netanyahu government since then. They're still very spirited, and that leads to the question of who's funding all of this, because this has gone on nonstop since before the Netanyahu government took power in the end of December 2022. So that's a long time. Those riots, and keep in mind too that the leaders of some of these protests were the opposition to Netanyahu in the last election, and they have been monetized and mobilized and have been saying the same message that this government is illegitimate since before it took power at the end of December 2022.
And trying to undermine the government.
Right, at every turn.
Yeah.
And enlisting the help of Washington, D.C. under the Biden administration to facilitate it, which none of it worked.
Yeah. Not getting the help under the Trump administration. Help us demystify what some people are saying, the deep state. What is the deep state, and why are they sort of coming against the Netanyahu government and Netanyahu himself? Right, and I have to bring in that the same thing is happening with President Trump, and it's happening in nations across the world. So this is a global thing. The easiest term, I guess, to define the deep state would be the unelected bureaucracy, that prime ministers and presidents come and go. The bureaucracy remains in place, and they want to keep their power base. In the case of Israel, that power base is clearly resided in the judiciary because they don't have a constitution in Israel. In the United States, you have a judiciary that really is the lesser of the three branches of government, but there are checks and balances built in. So in the United States, Trump has executive powers, and he's flexing those executive powers now against several recalcitrant judges who are saying you have no power to do this, and they're trying to, at the lower district level in the United States, they're trying to basically overthrow what the judiciary what the executive branch should do. And here, the protests in the streets are also complicated by a religious secular divide, where they think that if the vote goes to the people and the power is accrued by the people, that the religious will gain power. And I think that's an extra factor in this. Yeah. So. John, 40 seconds left. How can people pray? Well, it's enough to be fighting an 8-front war, and one of the fronts really is the threat of people say a threat of civil war. So pray that Israel will find common ground. They need a victory on the battlefield too, and a lot of this would go away. But the political battles are still going to go on. So just pray for people to receive the Lord and turn to Him, turn to the God of the Bible. Yeah. That would be a key. That would be a big key, John. Thanks for joining us. All right, thank you. When we come back, the chill wind of anti-Semitism sweeping through Australia. After the Holocaust, Jews emigrated to Australia, thinking they would be safe there. And for decades they were. Now the island nation is experiencing a surge in anti-Semitic incidents. Dale Hurd has that story.
When 2 Muslim nurses from the Sydney area hospital were suspended and then charged for boasting in a social media video about killing Jewish patients, it brought Australia's growing epidemic of Jew hatred to the world's attention.
I have a question though. All right, for sure. I have a question though. I have a question. Let's say an Israeli, God forbid.
I won't treat them. I'll kill them.
You'll kill them? So if an Israeli is in Australia and God forbid something happened to him and he comes to your hospital, would you kill him?
You have no idea how many Israeli Khara dog came to this hospital and
However, Australia's top Jewish leader told us this is only one of the latest incidents in what he described as an explosion of anti-Semitism down under. Alex Rivchin is co-chief executive of the Executive Council of Australian Jewry.
A synagogue which was incinerated, a childcare centre, private homes, cars, This is what we've been dealing with in Australia for the past 16 months.
This Melbourne synagogue, founded by Holocaust survivors, was firebombed in December. Arsonist also targeted Rivchin's former home, leaving anti-Jewish graffiti in an attempted attack against him. Australia's top spy chief now says fighting anti-Semitism is his agency's top priority. The nation has a new law against Jew hatred, and anti-Semitism has become an election issue. Rivchin says he's grateful something is finally being done, but says it should have happened sooner, like the day after October 7th, when an Islamic cleric in the streets of Sydney said he was delighted by the massacre, or when this pro-Hamas crowd chanted "Gas the Jews," or when Jewish buildings were vandalized and set on fire.
And there was very little done about this. There was very little political condemnation from the necessary places. There was very little police action. There was an inability to identify these people, and so things cascaded from there. We've seen this play out thousands of times in our history. We know where it leads.
Rivchin says he's hearing some Australian Jews, some the descendants of Holocaust survivors, beginning to say they would feel safer in Israel.
And it's kind of crazy to contemplate that people in Australia in our time feel less safe here than they would in a war zone, fighting on multiple fronts. But the more that these incidents take place and become normalized and happen in every sector, in the hospital sector now, in the universities, the schools and professions, it makes people really question their future in this country.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
The Ministry of Heritage chronicles Israel's story, the victories and the defeats, the players and the friends and enemies. Shira Shapira from the ministry has had to swiftly gather evidence since October 7th because of the disinformation war Hamas waged right after the attack. She spoke with us recently about her work and the role it plays in the nation's resilience. Is it important to collect this evidence because even just a few days after October 7th,
I think in the same day,
people started denying it. It didn't happen. It was made up. It was AI.
Millions of dollars are invested in order to tell a different story.
Yeah.
And to, not even contradicting, but really different story of what happened. And we can't let that happen.
Yeah. Are you also doing a resilience center?
Yeah. So resilience is much more than a center. It's a vision. What we think, I will share with you my vision, my own vision, and the vision of the Ministry of Heritage. We think, and I think everyone can connect to what I'm saying, there are two forces that everyone can relate to, that everyone feels. For one force is the force of remember, the wanting to remember, not only the trauma, but the past. We want to remember the past, our grandmother, our grandfather, the past of our community. We want to remember. The other force is the force of, circle of life. Life goes on. We have to continue. We have to go back to life. And people many times mistake and think that these two forces contradict. That either you remember, then everything will be devastating and traumatic, or you go back to life and then you forget. But we think no. These two forces are we have to combine them. They go together. You have to look at them as a connected force, and you have to see the heritage as a bridge between these two forces. You look to the past, you take it to the future. This is your heritage. And the way that you can, manage between the past and the future, the remembrance and the circle of life, this makes resilience. When you do this movement between past and future, you are getting resilience. That's what we are trying to do. And that's why let's say in Sderot, which is the city of resilience, they were suffering for many years, not only from the 7th of October. They know what resilience is. So we're making the center of the city the heritage of resilience.
Still ahead, uncommon bravery, the inspiring story of one soldier's heroism on October 7th. There's no family that hasn't been touched by the war, and during my conversation with Shira Shapira from the Ministry of Heritage, we learned about her own personal connection. Her son, an IDF soldier, was in the same bomb shelter on October 7th with American-Israeli Hirsch Goldberg Polin and others before some of them were kidnapped. Here's his riveting, heroic story. It's personal for everybody in Israel, but maybe more personal for you, for your son Anir. Tell us about that.
Okay, my husband and me, we have 7 kids. And the oldest is Anil. He was a soldier, and on the 7th of October he was off duty. He went to the Nova Festival. Around 6:30 in the morning, when what happened began, they called him. They said, "Come back to the army." He said, "Okay, I'm very close by. It's in Be'eri, the festival was, and he was in base Sufa." He went on the way, and on the route 232 were bombing and shooting, so they went into the shelter. It's very small, tiny shelter on the road. It's supposed to protect you from bombs, not from shooting. So what happened at the end, that it became like a death trap. And what happened is that when he got inside, everyone else, there were 27 people inside, they were panicked, they were afraid. So he said, in the immediate, when he came inside, he took responsibility. Although he didn't know them, only one friend, Hirsch Goldberg Polin, his friend. But he didn't know anyone else. And he said, I'm Anil Shapira, I'm a soldier at the elite unit of the Nachal. The army is on the way, everything will be okay, I will protect you. And he calmed everyone down. So the people inside said, we're so happy you're here, you're calming us down, thank you for coming. And then he thought that they will enter. He found a bottle of beer on the floor, and he broke it in order to have something sharp to attack when they enter, but they didn't enter. They didn't have the courage to enter, the terrorists, and they were only shooting, and he understood that they were going to throw grenades inside. So he told everyone inside, they will throw grenades, I will pick them up and throw them back. If I miss or if I get injured, you should continue after me. And that's what he did. The first grenade came inside, he picked it up and threw it back on the terrorist. The second one, again. The third one, again. Not once, not twice, 8 times he picked the grenades up and threw it on the terrorist. When they understood that they can't beat him with grenades, they brought RPG and they shot him. And we have a record of everything that happened inside because some girl pushed the record button on her phone, and we hear them saying inside, "You're such a fighter." They're talking to themselves, the people inside. He's throwing all the grenades. "You're a king. What you're doing for us?" And after we hear him say, "No, no," and a huge explosion, and he gave his life, to save others. After he died, they said, "Oh my God, we lost our protector." You hear the people inside. And then the terrorists came inside, they kidnapped 5 people, including Hirsch Goldberg Polin, and then came inside, shot people, and took the hostages. The people some of them were shot and dead, but most of them were only injured, but nobody came to save them. Only 2:30 afternoon came citizens to save, and the people that were saved, 7 people were saved. They said, there is one person, Anil Shapira, he saved our lives. We are alive due to him. And 2 weeks ago came one of the hostages, Or Levi, and he said he wanted to talk to us the day after, and he told us the exact same story. I'm alive due to your son. And came another one, Elia Cohen, and he said the exact same story, and there is still one inside. We pray so much for him to come with all the other hostages. But Anil saved lives. He couldn't save his own life, but he saved so many lives, and he left us a lot of music. He was a musician, and paintings. He was a painter also. And we continue his heritage. We continue with his legacy. We publish his music, and we want to be able to, to make his legacy alive. The same that I'm trying to do with my profession, to the communities, to the nation. Take our past and make it alive with our heritage to the future.
Well, he's leaving an amazing legacy, and may his memory be a blessing. Thank you so much, Shira. Well, that's such a powerful story. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. And please keep praying for Israel during this time of assault, for the protection of IDF soldiers and all those caught in harm's way, and for the safe return of all the hostages. I'm Chris Mitchell. For all of us here in the Jerusalem Bureau, we'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.